Have you ever finished watching Somewhere in Time and felt like something was missing? Like there were all these loose threads that never got tied up. You know what I'm talking about. That mysterious pocket watch that seems to appear out of nowhere. Or why some of the characters do things that don't really make sense. Well, here's something most people don't know about this beloved movie. It's actually based on a book called Bedtime Return by Richard Matheson. And get this, the same guy who wrote the book also wrote the screenplay for the movie. But here's the really interesting part. The book answers pretty much every single question the movie leaves hanging. Today we're going to dig into the original story and see how it clears up all those mysteries. We'll look at the big differences between the book and the film. And trust me, some of these changes will completely surprise you. By the time we're done here, you'll understand this story in a totally different way. You'll finally get answers to all those questions that have been bugging you since you first watched the movie. So let's jump right in and explore what Richard Matheson originally had in mind. Let's start with something pretty basic, where the story actually takes place. In the movie, everything happens at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island in Michigan. But in the original book, the whole story unfolds at the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego, California. The Hotel del Coronado is this massive, beautiful Victorian beach resort that's been around since the 1880s. It's got this fairy tale castle look that would have been perfect for a romantic time travel story. But the filmmakers decided Michigan's Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island worked better for their vision. And honestly, both locations are pretty magical in their own way. Now let's talk about Richard Collier, our main character. In the movie, Richard is this successful playwright who just had his latest show open. He's celebrating his success when he meets the mysterious old woman. But in the book, Richard is just a regular writer, not specifically a playwright, just someone who writes for a living. And here's the big difference that changes everything. Richard has a terminal brain tumor. He's been told he has maybe 4 to 6 months left to live. Can you imagine how that changes the whole story? This guy isn't just looking for love or adventure. He's literally facing death and desperately searching for meaning in his final months. That adds this whole layer of urgency and desperation that the movie doesn't have. The book also describes Richard as this tall, handsome 36-year-old guy who looks exactly like, not Christopher Reeve, but Paul Newman. That's quite the mental image to work with. Now when it comes to Elise McKenna, her character stays pretty much the same in both versions. She's still this incredibly beautiful, talented actress from 1897 instead of the movie's 1912. The main difference is that the book makes it crystal clear just how wealthy she is. We're talking seriously rich here. She's not just some struggling actress. She's got real money and status. In the book, Elise's mother actually travels with the acting company. She stays at the hotel with Elise and keeps an eye on her career. But the movie completely removes the mother from the story. That was probably a smart move to keep the focus on the main romance. Having a protective mother around would have made the love story way more complicated. Now let's talk about William Fawcett Robinson. This character goes through a huge transformation between book and movie. In the original book, Robinson is this rough, working-class guy who smokes cigars constantly. He's got this blue-collar background and speaks pretty simply. But Christopher Plummer's movie version is the complete opposite. He's sophisticated, well-educated, and comes across as this refined upper-class gentleman. And honestly, I think the movie made the right call with this change. Plummer's Robinson is so much more interesting as this cultured but controlling manager. He becomes this complex character who genuinely believes he's protecting Elise's career. In both versions, Robinson is completely obsessed with Elise's success, but the movie does a better job showing that his obsession comes from wanting to create the greatest actress of all time. It's not just some creepy romantic thing. It's professional pride taken to an extreme. The book hints that Robinson might have romantic feelings for Elise, but the movie makes it clear his interest is purely professional, even though it's taken to unhealthy levels. That makes him more sympathetic as a character, even when he's being the villain. Now let's get to that famous opening scene where old Elise visits young Richard. This happens in both the book and the movie. She approaches him, gives him this intense look, and says something mysterious before walking away. But here's where things get really different. In the book, she never gives him the pocket watch. The pocket watch still shows up in the book, but it completely solves that time paradox problem. You know what I'm talking about, that endless loop, where nobody knows where the watch originally came from. In the movie, old Elise gives the watch to young Richard. Then Richard takes it back in time to Elise. Elise keeps it her whole life until she's old and once again gives it back to young Richard. It's this impossible loop with no beginning. But the book fixes this completely. In the book version, Elise gives the watch to Richard as a gift during their time together in 1897. It's just a normal gift from girlfriend to boyfriend. Problem solved. No more impossible time paradox. The book also gets way deeper into Richard's moral struggle about the whole time travel thing. After he researches what happened to Elise after their encounter in 1896, he discovers her life became pretty sad. She never found love again and seemed to live with this deep sadness. So Richard starts questioning himself. Should I even go back in time if I know it's going to hurt her? But then he finds something that changes everything. He discovers his own name in the hotel register from 1896. History shows he was already there. So he realizes he has to go back because that's what already happened. He can't change history, he can only fulfill it. The book spends way more time explaining exactly how this time travel is supposed to work. Richard uses this book called Man and Time by B Priestley. And yes, this book makes a quick appearance in the movie too, but it's not explained much. Priestley talks about 3 different time zones: time 1, time 2, and time 3. The basic idea is that your subconscious mind actually determines what time period you're experiencing. So Richard's method is to completely convince his subconscious that he's living in 1897, not 1971. He has to remove every single trace of modern life from his awareness. Pretty wild concept when you think about it. And apparently, some people claim this kind of time slip actually happens in real life. There are documented stories of 2 women in Europe who claim they accidentally slipped back in time while visiting a historic location. Another case involves 2 women at Gettysburg who said they briefly witnessed a Civil War battlefield hospital scene in the 1980s or 90s. Whether you believe these stories or not, it's interesting that the concept exists outside of fiction. The movie handles the time travel explanation differently, but just as well. That scene where Richard visits his old college professor is one of my favorite parts of the whole film.
Dr. Finney.
You'll have to walk with me, young man. I have another class. What's your name?
Collier, sir. Richard Collier.
Student?
Yes, I was 9 years ago.
What can I do for you?
I have a question for you, sir.
Shoot.
Is time travel possible?
I was in Venice, 1971, staying in a very old hotel. What I mean, very old. Structure, furnishings, everything. The atmosphere was aged, if you follow me. In my room, I felt as though it was a century or more earlier than 1971. You understand?
Sir. So, in other words, then the location is very important.
Not all important, but essential. And my mind suggests to it that it isn't 1971, but 1570. I closed my eyes and fed a suggestion into my brain. It's August 1571. I am in the Hotel del Vecchio, and I spelled out the details for myself and did it over and over and again and again and again.
And?
Well, I'll never really know, Richard. I've never done it since. And I'm not sure I'd want to do it again. If it really did happen, I was only there a fraction of an instant, remember? A flicker.
Yes, sir, I understand that, but you were there.
I thought so.
The professor explains the process so clearly and matter-of-factly. It really helps the audience understand what Richard needs to do, without getting too bogged down in theory. In the book, Richard experiences what you might call time travel sickness. He gets these dizzy spells and disorienting moments that threaten to pull him back to 1971. It's kind of like what happens in the Philadelphia experiment.
Get the hell out of here! Come on, get up!
If you've seen that movie, the time travel isn't smooth. It's this constant struggle to stay in the right time period. When Richard finally makes it back to 1896, the book has him locked in his hotel room. He actually has to break out of his own room to get to the hotel lobby. The movie skips this whole sequence and goes straight to the funnier scene of Richard trying to blend in with 1896 society. You know, that great sequence where he's trying to figure out how to act like someone from the 1890s. Both versions have Richard and Elise first meeting on the beach. In the movie, she sees him and says, "Is it you?" And he responds, "Yes." Then Robinson shows up and interrupts the whole thing.
Is it you? Is it?
Yes.
The movie pretty much leaves the explanation there and moves on. But the book reveals that Elise was completely expecting to meet someone under these exact circumstances. She was told by fortune tellers that she'd encounter a mysterious man on the beach in November. That's when she was performing at the hotel. The movie changes this to summertime, by the way. Elise got this prediction from two different sources, a gypsy woman and an American Indian woman. Both told her she'd meet this strange man, who would be very important in her life. So when Richard shows up on the beach, she's not totally shocked. She's been waiting for this moment. Here's a scene that's completely different between the book and movie. In the book, when Robinson and Elise sit down for dinner that first night, Richard actually joins them. Can you imagine how awkward that dinner conversation must have been? Richard just shows up out of nowhere, and Elise insists that Robinson let him share the spare bed in Robinson's room. Talk about uncomfortable tension around the dinner table. The movie wisely skips this whole awkward dinner party scene. Instead, it focuses on Richard and Elise getting to know each other in more private, romantic settings. Much better for the pacing and the love story. Now we get to the biggest difference between book and movie, the ending. And this is where things get really heartbreaking, but also much clearer. In the movie, Richard and Elise have their romantic encounter and spend time together. But then Richard accidentally sees something modern. It's a penny from 1971. This pulls him back to his own time, while Elise is watching. She actually sees him disappear right in front of her eyes. It's this devastating moment where she loses the love of her life and doesn't understand what happened. The book ending is totally different and way more detailed. Richard and Elise do find each other and have their romantic encounter. And let me tell you, the book version is much steamier than the PG-13 movie version. Matheson doesn't hold back on the romantic details. After their romantic scene, they both fall asleep together. But then Elise wakes up first and notices Richard's journal sitting nearby. This journal contains his entire time travel story, everything about how he got there and why. While Richard is still sleeping, Elise starts reading parts of the journal. She also writes him this beautiful love letter talking about their future together. But the letter also shows that she's learned about his time travel from reading the journal. Richard Matheson deliberately leaves it unclear exactly how much of the journal she read. Did she figure out the whole story, or just parts of it? When Richard wakes up, he finds both his open journal and Elise's love letter. He realizes immediately that he's in big trouble. The letter is from the future. It talks about their plans and uses knowledge that could only come from his journal. He knows he has to destroy this letter to cut all ties to the future. So he decides to sneak out while Elise is sleeping and burn the letter on the beach. He thinks he'll only be gone for a few minutes and then come back to her. But as he's walking to the beach in the early morning, Robinson jumps him. Apparently Robinson been watching their room and knew something was up. They get into this physical fight on the beach, and Richard actually wins. But during the struggle, something falls out of Richard's jacket. When Richard automatically looks down to see what it is, boom, he gets pulled back to 1971. He never gets to see Elise again or explain what happened. The movie shows that after Richard disappears, Elise never acts on stage again. She basically stays at the Grand Hotel for the rest of her life, deeply depressed and alone. The movie also mentions that Elise became obsessed with studying time travel and physics books. But here's the question that always bothered me about the movie. How would Elise figure out that Richard was a time traveler from the future just from seeing him disappear? That's a pretty big leap, right? The book answers this question perfectly. In the book version, Richard told 3 different people that he was a time traveler. He told the 2 guys who tied him up when he first arrived in 1896, and he told Robinson during their fight on the beach. So after Richard disappeared, Elise could talk to these 3 people. Combined with whatever she read in Richard's journal, she could piece together the whole truth. That's how she knew to find young Richard Collier decades later and set the whole time loop in motion. She understood she had to give him the photograph and inspire him to come back in time to meet her. The book also reveals that while Elise remained heartbroken and never married after Richard left, she didn't completely give up on life. She kept acting and even traveled around the world with her theater company. She was sad, but she kept living. The movie version has her becoming basically a recluse at the hotel, which is much more depressing. She just stops living and waits to die so she can be reunited with Richard. The book version gives her more strength and resilience. She's heartbroken but not completely destroyed. Another interesting detail from the book, Richard's brain tumor actually plays into the ending. Remember, he was dying anyway when he first decided to travel back in time. So in a way, his death at the end isn't just from heartbreak over losing Elise. It's also his terminal illness finally catching up with him. This adds another layer to the tragedy, but also makes it feel less like he just gave up on life. The movie removes the brain tumor completely, so Richard's death seems to be purely from heartbreak and despair. Both versions work emotionally, but the book gives it more complexity. So you can see how the original book, Bid Time Return, answers almost every single question the movie leaves open. The pocket watch paradox, completely solved with a logical explanation. How Elise knew Richard was a time traveler. She read his journal and interviewed witnesses. Why certain character motivations seem unclear. The book provides way more background and context for everyone. Richard Matheson wrote both versions, so we can definitely trust that the book explanations apply to the movie's mysteries. The movie had to cut things for time and pacing, but the book gives us the complete picture. It's like getting the director's cut with all the deleted scenes that explain everything. So there you have it. Somewhere in Time makes so much more sense when you know the original source material. The book Bid Time Return fills in all those gaps that probably left you scratching your head after watching the movie. From that mysterious pocket watch to character motivations to that heartbreaking ending, the book provides clear answers to everything. If you're a fan of the movie, I really think you should check out Richard Matheson's original novel. I have an Amazon link in the description at no additional cost to you. You'll see this whole story in a completely new light. Everything will finally click into place. Which version do you prefer, the book's detailed explanations or the movie's more streamlined approach? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if this video finally answered some questions you've always had about Somewhere in Time, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more deep dives into the books behind your favorite movies. Make sure you subscribe because I've got another video coming soon about the original book's different take on the ending. Trust me, it's different from what you saw in the movie and you won't want to miss it. Hit that notification bell so you get it as soon as it goes live. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.